What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy. Want to wish you a very happy third day. It is Thursday, the third day of July, appropriately the 3rd, 2025. A happy early 4th of July to all of you who are watching, all of you who are listening, all of you who aren't doing either of those things but are somehow, some way connected to this video in spirit. I'm live in the Bleacher Report app because it is a Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can catch these live shows every Tuesday and Thursday at 6, of course, Central. You can also catch them on demand in the Bleacher Report app. You can follow me in the Bleacher Report app so you get access to those a little bit faster than having to search around for them. You can also get them on demand on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. So make sure to like the video, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Been a busy week on the BTB YouTube channel. And on Friday, on the 4th of July, got a brand new video conversation speaking to my good friend, my coworker, my colleague, Mookie Alexander. For you people who have followed me for a long time, Mookie is the me at SB Nation for the Seattle Seahawks. He runs Field Goals, our Seattle Seahawks site. And I've been meaning to get a conversation go with Mookie, recorded so that we could talk about Brian Schottenheimer and his time with the Seahawks, what Mookie's thoughts and opinions were, what he kind of remembers. Obviously, it's been a little over 5 years, relative to the entire era, but good conversation. So that drops on Friday, and that will be the 4th of July. Whatever you're doing, I hope it's wonderful. I hope it's a good time. I hope it's safe for you if you're with little ones or whatever. If you've got pets, be on the lookout for everybody. I've got 2 dogs, and one of them is a little bit more sensitive to the fireworks than the other. So we'll be doing our best to keep the bear man as calm as we can. It's a long night, and you know that if you've ever had a dog. But we're here today on Thursday to discuss the Dallas Cowboys, and we're going to be looking basically at everything that they have done to date, because we have kind of examined it in certain respects and talked about certain avenues that the team has explored relative to team building. The trades obviously stand out. George Pickens, chief among them. The draft was fantastic in and of itself, but it is one thing to kind of look at it in totality and say, okay, this is it. Like this was, you're about to sit down for the test and see how much the studying you did, because they did study, right? How much it ultimately took and how much it stuck, or how much is sticking, I should say, from the studying that was done, and what you're going to be able to apply to the exam, because we're not, just there yet. We have about 3 weeks and change, and not even really, I guess, 2 weeks and change. So the Cowboys report to Oxnard for training camp, and that's when, it's not quite the exam, but it's the the teacher starting and telling you, passing out the exam, telling you to have, I don't even know if you have your number 2 pencils anymore. I don't know if that's a thing, but it was at one point in time, and now I feel very old. So what I have done for you, I was very kind, and I listed every major offseason move that the Cowboys made over the course of the last few months. Now, I have taken the liberty of calling them major moves, and therefore some things are left off. Your, undrafted free agents aren't here. Your players who you brought back on one-year deals, all due respect to those players we're talking about, these are the things that are ultimately going to move the needle or not, right? Like, these are the things that we kind of expect to be the wind beneath this team's wings in different, sorts of ways. Not everybody can be George Pickens. But that being said, I did my best to get them in chronological order. It was a little bit tough. But that being said, let's begin. And this is, you're looking at an article from bloggingtheboys.com, looking at an article from the future. Sometimes you get that view when you check this out, because this isn't out yet, but it's in the can. And so should be out probably sometime over the weekend. You take a look at things. But that being said, first thing the Cowboys did that I think, I have said that the Cowboys were ultimately going, or I have said, looking back, that they were selectively aggressive. It's stupid, but it is, it is what it is. And so that being said, let me get this off. How do I do this? I don't know what's going on here. There, are we back? No, what's going on? Okay, let's share this. There we go. Oh gosh. There, are we back? Goodness gracious. There we go. Okay, so we're back. That was crazy. I don't know why that happened, but getting the Osa Odigizua deal done, there's so many things that feel forgotten right now. I think because the George Pickens trade headlines things, and then you get a little bit deeper and you've got Kyrie Elam starting to kind of shine a little bit. Kenneth Murray has had a few moments that have really, kind of stood out, and Tyler Booker is Tyler Booker. But I mean, re-signing Osa Odigizua was a big deal. And not only re-signing him, but not having to go the way of the franchise tag. Like, that's how that happened. I mean, I know it's been, almost 4 months at this point in time, But we all thought, I'll speak for myself. I thought the Cowboys are absolutely going to tag this man. They're going to call it a placeholder. They're going to wait all the way until July 15th. We'd still be in that, limbo if that had been the case in all likelihood. And we're going to be waiting. They're going to use this, blah, blah, blah. And they did not. Granted, it was like the day before the franchise tag was due. That deadline was due back in March. But they got a long-term deal done with Ochoa, which was commendable. I mean, can we quibble and can we say, oh, you should have done this a year ago, the way we're saying with, different players right now, not just Micah Parsons, like your Tyler Smiths and Deron Blands? Absolutely. You should always be getting ahead of these things. But the fact that they did not wait until the 11th hour, it was still like the 10th, but they did not wait until the 11th hour, was impressive relative to who we've known this team to be. So let's get back up on the screen. If I could do this properly now, let me remove my background, and here we go. They also got Kevontae Turpin taken care of. We all thought that restricted free agency and the tender and all that stuff was going to be a big old deal with him, but it was not. They got a long-term deal done with him, I would say, with no drama, right? Like, that's what was kind of shocking. And all this was happening when we were still new and early and green in the Brian Schottenheimer era, when Jerry was not speaking at the NFL Combine, right? There was no, I know that selectively aggressive was a thing, and I know that at that point, Steven had already done his air quotes, but there was no buzzword. There was no, anything. It was just kind of working on football, which was nice to see. And then free agency hit. And again, I've listed the moves that I have qualified personally to feel like big or sizable or, influential, whatever you want to call it. But Solomon Thomas was important. Javonte Williams, Rob Jones was early on. Peyton Turner, that's like, when I was curating all this, I mean, I'm going to assume that you had forgotten the Cowboys signed Peyton Turner. And I'm not saying like, watch out, here he comes, 12 sacks in 2025. But you had forgotten about that because they had done a lot of other things. That's kind of my overall point. But Javonte Williams, Rob Jones, Peyton Turner, obviously I mentioned the trade for Kyrie Elam. Jack Sanborn, the lone player to follow Matt Eberflus from Chicago to the Cowboys. Obviously, Eberflus was his head coach of the Bears and now his defensive coordinator. Kenneth Murray, talked about the trade acquisition. Miles Sanders, that kind of happened in the dead of night. That was interesting. Let's stop right here. Let's kind of cut it off at Paris Campbell, because it felt like this was the first wave. I know you saw Joe Milton's name, but it felt like he was a part of the second wave. It felt like this was the first moment we were like, holy crap, y'all actually, did some stuff. And this also encompassed the time in which DeMarcus Lawrence left for the Seahawks, in which Zach Martin retired, in which, all these other things were happening. That was mostly the DeMarcus Lawrence thing. But I mean, this was solid. Like, I feel like if they had called it, if they hadn't done anything else except draft at this point in time, I think we would have, we wouldn't have been happy, but we would have said, well, you did a lot more than you normally do. And so kudos, respect. Like, at this point, go look up any tweet or any article or any YouTube video or anything, any piece of content that was made right around when the Cowboys had just signed Paris Campbell. I think we all felt like, man, there's no more room at the inn, right? Like, our cup is full. Like, you put even one more drop in this thing and it's going to spill over. It's going to overflow. There's just no way that we can take on any more moves in free agency because we're not used to this right now. This is behavior that is completely and totally foreign to how we have known you to operate for a very, very long time. And I want to be clear. Let me see if I can stop this the right way. And boom, first track. I know that these were low-level deals. I know that these were not things that felt like they were earth-shattering. I know that, none of these things guarantee the Cowboys a Super Bowl. I'm not trying to put lipstick on a pig. All I'm trying to do is tell you that it's not a pig, right? Like, I'm not trying to put lipstick on whatever we define this to be, but like, this was legitimate work. This was legitimate work that the front office made, in the early wave of free agency. In fact, I don't have the exact dates on here because, like I said, I try to do it as best I could in chronological order. But I'll have because I have charted this before myself. Each of the last 2 years, in both 2024 and 2023, the Dallas Cowboys were the last. Number 32 out of 32 teams in the NFL. They were the last team to either sign or agree to terms with an external free agent. Obviously, they had at different points in time early in the free agency process, in each of those 2 years, they had, negotiated with somebody who had been on their roster previously, who they were bringing back. They were getting a longer term deal done with, a new deal, another 1 year deal of that variety. But they were the last team for 2 years in a row to bring in new blood. And not only were they not the last team this particular time in 2025, but each of those instances, if it isn't obvious, those signings, whenever they ultimately happened, it was, I think, James Washington in 2023, and last year might have been Zeke, which was, again, kind of a unique thing. Or I'm sorry, it was Eric Kendricks. But ultimately, I mean, the Eric Kendricks thing, I bring this up all the time because it matters. He had actually agreed to terms with the San Francisco 49ers on the day that he signed with the Cowboys. It was reported that morning, whatever day it was, like a Tuesday, that he had agreed to go to San Francisco. And then at like 6 p.m. in the evening, he had changed his mind and was going to the Cowboys. So it wasn't even normal for them. It's kind of ultimately my point. That being said, though, those signings, whenever they did happen, happened well after the new league year, and everybody counts down and treats it like it's something big or whatever. They had not done anything in the legal tampering period. But this time in 2025, not only were they earlier at this part of the roster construction process than they had been in years past, but they got several deals done before the new league year began. They got several deals done in the legal tampering window, which, again, and I hate repeating myself in this way, but I think it's important context. No one is saying, watch out, they're winning the Super Bowl because of this. Oh, here they come, they're back. Like, that's not the point. The point is simply to tell you the truth. And the truth is that they have done things one way for a very, very long time. And I'm not saying that the way they're doing it now is polar opposite, 180 degrees the opposite direction, but it is very different. It is foreign to them relative to how they have behaved. Now, we can sit here and bicker and argue and speculate about why they've done things the way they've done them over the last few years, why they continue to do things like, I have a list here of all of the major moves of the offseason, and they include several re-signings, but they don't include, at least as of Thursday, July the 3rd, a re-signing or an extension for Micah Parsons, right? Like, that's one of those things that, it's kind of strange to be like, oh, they started, acting like adults. They started, they're not wearing diapers anymore, right? They're wearing big boy pants, and they can open the door by themselves, but then they just they want to have that pacifier. They just can't let it go for whatever reason. They have to behave this way. So it is what it is. But this was kind of phase one, like I said. So let's take a look at phase two, phase dos. Let me do this, man. I'm getting good at this. Didn't even take me that long. So let's start with Joe Milton. And George Pickens is the last name on this list, just kind of a spoiler. This, I think, was kind of phase two and phase three, if we're, labeling things. But trading for Joe Milton, I think, was it was really shocking and surprising and enlightening, right? Now, when they traded for Trey Lance, and let's back up here, all right? When they traded for Trey Lance, 2 years ago, it was very dumb. I mean, it was done in about the worst possible way you could do it, because they did not have any time to see him. They traded for him, in case you forgot, on the eve of the final preseason game of the 2023 season. So they didn't get, OTAs with him, or mini camp, or training camp, or preseason. They just got completely and totally what he was, because the regular season was about to start and you could not keep him on the roster. And so you kind of saw him a few times in practice, but that really wasn't enough. So that being said, the trade for Joe Milton was exciting because he's this exciting prospect and he has all this, fun stuff in terms of who he's been in college and his lone year in the NFL. And so he has these qualities, these, things that we like, things that we could see being useful. And we understand that this, whether you are Team Dak or not, or however you want to label that, we understand that Dak Prescott has had issues staying healthy, issues playing an entire regular season. So it makes sense to, approach the QB2 position with some more seriousness, some more legitimacy. I have long said, and this doesn't apply to Joe Milton, but one of my favorite things that the Cowboys have done in recent history was signing Andy Dalton in free agency in 2020. Now, everybody who breathes from their mouth thought that, oh man, watch out, Andy Dalton, this means Dak Prescott's in trouble, when all it was he was a proper, serviceable backup quarterback. And my favorite archetype of backup quarterbacks is the young guy who's kind of been around the NFL, who maybe has, somewhere between 10 to 20 starts because he tried with one team and it just wasn't enough. I thought Gardner Minshew kind of fit into that camp before, the last few years. I'm talking about Gardner Minshew when the Eagles traded for him, when he was a part of the Jaguars and they drafted Trevor Lawrence, all that stuff. And so I love that archetype. I love that archetype of a QB2. Now, Joe Milton isn't quite there because he hasn't had a ton, or at least relative to Gardner Minshew or Andy Dalton, NFL experience. But he is somebody who's been around. He is somebody who's still a bit of a project. He's somebody who can be Brian Schottenheimer's guy. And I think you always want to have your head coach, particularly if it's an offensive, coach with an offensive philosophy or offensive background like Brian Schottenheimer. I think you always want them to have that quarterback who they're just kind of working on, the way I know it didn't work out, but the way Mike McCarthy in his first year, yes, obviously he inherited Dak Prescott, and yes, he signed Andy Dalton, but he threw a 7th-round pick at Ben DiNucci. So you always kind of want to have him, your head coach that is an offensive guy, have that dude who he's kind of curating and working with and trying to develop. I don't want to say on the side, but just as a part of the overall roster. So Joe Milton presents that, and so it was nice, because Cooper Rush had left in free agency. I love Will Grier, and he was awesome in the good video with Dak Prescott and Tad Prescott, but it would have been, unfortunately, it would have been, in my estimation, pretty irresponsible of the Cowboys to just go into 2025 with Will Grier. So I love that they said, okay, we're going to hedge our bet. We're going to, pay a little bit more, pay a little bit of a premium, if you want to even call it that, to trade for Joe Milton. We still have 3 years of team control, again, which differentiates it from the Trey Lance situation. So I loved this trade in every single way. I loved what it represents. I love how it suggests the way the Cowboys are thinking. And it did kind of kickstart the second phase of the offseason for the team. And then you've got all the draft picks, right? And that's really what this is mostly about. Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezraku, Savon Ravel, Jaden Blue, Shamar James, Johnny Cornelius, Jay Toia, Phil Maffa, and Tommy Aking-Basote. I think that it's been a couple of months now, obviously, since the draft. And I think that the person that people are probably the most excited about is maybe Tyler Booker. I mean, there's been kind of different periods and different windows where Savon Ravel had a moment where he was the guy, Jaden Blue had a moment, and these things will kind of adjust and move and float along as we get to and through training camp as well, because there will be a day that Jaden Blue has an amazing highlight, or a day that Phil Maffa has an amazing highlight, because that's just the way that things go, or a day that Tyler Booker wins some sort of one-on-one and whatever. That being said, I mean, when we look at this team, they kind of addressed all of their needs just in the draft. Now, you can argue they didn't draft a wide receiver, but they obviously traded for George Pickens immediately afterwards. And I'm here to be fully honest with you. I was against it, and I want to always be honest, like I said. But he unequivocally addressed a need for them, a serious need, and unequivocally seriously addressed that need. Now, I stand by the fact that if you're going to have him on the team, then you might as well extend him now. I don't know what you're waiting for, but I digress. I'm not here to fight that fight today, at least. But this second window was such an amplification of what they did in the first window, right? If we scroll back up here, this first window from Osadigizua down to Paris Campbell was all about kind of setting a base floor, or raising the floor, if you will, just kind of addressing would-be holes, making sure, putting out all the fires on the roster that existed when the 2024 season ended, right? Just making sure that ground zero was calm, and that there was a proper foundation to kind of look at. It was kind of like what do they call it in like home garden, like renovation day, right? Like it was kind of like reno day, and there was a little bit of like, I think we could take this wall out, right? I think we could improve. I think we can make an open, floor plan here, whatever. Like that's what this first window kind of suggests to me. But the second window, this second phase from Joe Milton down through George Pickens, was a little bit more of like, okay, we've got the bones, we've got the the frames up, we've even got sheetrocking, we're starting to paint, like we're kind of starting to see the way this house is ultimately going to look. We have more than a floor plan. We have more than blueprints. We can bring the drone in and film the video to put it on the realtor's website, right? Like there are, this was a really nice kind of enhancement of the roster as it was at the end of that first phase. And I think that, when they signed Paris Campbell, and I don't mean to pick on him, but we all thought like, that's it. Like that's your big move at wide receiver. Is, we wanted Cooper Kupp, right? There were different moments where we had different kind of guys we were leaning towards. And certainly relative to the draft, there were a number of players who we all wanted, Ted McMillan or Matthew Golden or pick your name, obviously, as we went further down the line. But we wanted different things. And it was kind of like in that house, we're like, man, we really want a wet bar. We really want to please, like, come on, like this spot would be great for a wet bar. And they were like, no, we can't do it. We can't change this, whatever. And then all of a sudden we walked in one day and they were like, check it out. I know you wanted the wet bar, but I was able to build a fully functional bar, and there's a place for you to even install a mini keg, right? And you're just like, oh man, this is pretty sick. Like this is even more sick than I could have envisioned or idealized or hypothesized, right? Like this was cool. It worked out well. I'm glad we went in the order that we did, because we were able to discover that we could do this as a result of the decisions we made, and also a result of the decisions we did not make up to this point. And I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to guess, and I'll take myself off here. I'm going to guess that there isn't a thing the Cowboys did this offseason that you would change. Now, I am going to assume that that's wrong, so I'll just kind of hedge my own bet and say, I don't think you have like 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 when you have a piece of food stuck in your tooth or like in the back of your teeth, and you kind of like can't even function. You have to get it. You have to go get a toothpick, or you have to go brush it out. Like you literally cannot be back in society until you take care of this thing that is in your teeth. I don't think that there's anything like that for you. Like there might be something where you're like, I wish it had been a little bit different, but you can certainly live with the way the offseason went, right? I don't think there's a single thing that you're like, it's just in the back of my tooth. Like there's nothing that is stuck in your craw, nothing that is supremely bothering you, nothing that is weighing you down, nothing that you feel like they really messed up. Maybe it's the fact that a Micah Parsons extension hasn't happened. And I would offer, if we're being fair and literal, that it could still happen before the season begins. Would it be done in the most efficient manner possible? Obviously not. We've crossed that bridge long, long, long ago, and we're well down this bridge as well with Deron Bland and Tyler Smith and George Pickens and Brandon Aubrey. Like the list could go on forever. But I don't think that they did anything that you are like, man, I just did not see that, especially with the benefit of hindsight, especially with the benefit of looking at the totality of everything that this offseason entailed. I don't think that you're looking at any part of it and saying they suck. Like, and I'm not suggesting that you're looking at and be like, dude, they cooked. Like, I'm not saying that you should feel that way. What I am saying, as somebody who can be and is critical of this team in moments that I believe they deserve it, I'm not saying like, oh, let's stand up and cheer and throw a parade. But I think that, I think they did their jobs, right? Like we're sitting here, 2.5 weeks away from training camp, as mentioned, and they're ready, right? Their roster is kind of ready to go. The worst thing that's going on right now is you have different outlets coming up with whatever they can to just, do the Cowboys thing because it's the deadest part of the year when it comes to the NFL. But and again, I wish that they would have signed Micah and all these different things, but that's just, I hate to say it this way, and it sounds like giving up, and so I don't mean to do it like that, but it's just the way they are, right? Like, I mean, we can sit here till we're blue in the face, and to be very clear, we will. When they mess this up again with Tyler Smith or Tyler Guyton, if it comes to that, or George Pickens or whatever, we will sit here and we will say the same thing, and we will point out the same examples, so we would talk in the exact same words in the same manner about how similarly silly it all was from the very beginning. And they will not change. At least that's what they're proving to us time and time and time again. But if that's the one thing that's stuck in your craw, the kernel of popcorn that's stuck in the back of your teeth, fine. I get that. You have a right to feel that way. Everybody has a right to feel that way. But if we're just talking about the way the roster looked when they lost in Week 18 at home to Washington, and when they had to watch the playoffs and Washington make the title game and Philly win it and also win the Super Bowl, I think they have done what they can to bridge the gap. I think they have, for whatever reason, whether it was shame or embarrassment out of last year, or last year they were doing whatever, they have decided to be functional members of the NFL society and more than on a bare minimum level do their jobs. Because that's the thing, like sometimes, we accuse them, and I think fairly so, of just doing the bare minimum. They have, to be very clear, done way more than the bare minimum here. Now, I'm not saying they've pulled every lever and done, explored every nook and cranny and crevice and underneath every single rock this offseason. I don't think that that's them. But I do think that if we're measuring the amount of kinetic energy expended by every single front office, I think that they're, in the top 10. I think that they have, done what they can to outfit this team, to outfit this roster. And I think they've done what they can to help Dak and to help Brian Schottenheimer, obviously. And whether, again, that is because they feel badly about the way the Mike McCarthy thing ended, or they feel like they just needed to do it differently. I don't care how it happened. I just care that we're here, that we're on the precipice of training camp, and that when I look at the totality of this offseason and every single move that they made, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty pleased. I mean, I'm not ready to run out and buy any kind of jersey or anything like that, but I am as excited for football as I have been in a very long time. And that's ultimately the emotion that I kind of keep coming back to, because I've said it in different places. I've certainly said it here on Bleach Report and here on the YouTube channel last year. And I know you agree with this. Last year was just such a drag. Like it was so not fun. I mean, and it really, it's when the Cowboys are bad, it sucks to watch things, right? Like I remember vividly, if you all recall, if you've been watching for a little bit now, in 2013, in the penultimate week of the regular season, the Cowboys went to Washington, and Tony Romo had this heroic touchdown that he threw to DeMarco Murray to win that game, and it set up a third straight NFC East title game for the Cowboys, and this one was going to be at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. And it came out like on Monday that Romo's injury was too severe and he wasn't going to be able to play, and so it was going to be Kyle Orton. And that day, I was just like devastated. You couldn't have talked to me about anything. I remember I was at a car wash when I got that alert, and I was just so down. And that night, the Atlanta Falcons visited the San Francisco 49ers in what was the final game at Candlestick Park. And I had that Monday Night Football game on, and I just watched it like a zombie. I just watched it like I really just did not care about football that particular day. And I would say that emotion, that kind of feeling, that kind of identity encircled me a lot last year, right? Like, I love the NFL. You love the NFL. I don't know how many fantasy leagues or survivor pools or whatever you're in, or Madden franchises you have, but I am going to guarantee that you have a lot of, of your own energy that is taken up by the NFL on an annual basis, beyond just being a Dallas Cowboys fan. And so last year, the way they were really, again, I think you agree with this, really suppressed that and really kind of, for lack of a better word, really kind of ruined it, right? And that's why, I don't think we were too upset when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, because in our minds it was like, well, that year, like, it sucked, like it doesn't, it didn't really count. Versus like 2022, that was such an awesome year. So if they'd won that Super Bowl, it would have really hurt. And so to be able to kind of, have that flame relit is nice, and that's why I'm so passionate about the idea that the Cowboys have done enough to be excited over, enough for us to be pumped about, enough for us to kind of hoot and holler just a little bit, enough for us to say, hey, good job, great effort. Now it's time for you to be right on these things, right? Because you can, and that's true for everybody. That's not just true for the Cowboys. Now it's time for you to be right, for us to look at these trades and look at these moves and look at the guys you let walk and look at the way you handle these contracts, and to say, okay, you were right, or we were right, or we were all right, whatever the case may be. But like I said, I'm at the very least way more interested in that process than I was at this time last year. So kudos to the Cowboys for, as I like to say, being functional members of society, more than the bare minimum. That's, we and I think we had all resorted to this place of like, look, we don't need you to be the Eagles. We don't need you to be the Ravens in terms of offseason moves, right? But you got to do more than this. It was the classic, Office episode when Michael and Jim swap places, and Jim calls me. He's like, you got to do something, man. I don't know why I'm putting the phone here, but like, he's like, you got to do something, man. You can't just sit there, right? And that's what last year was like. It was just them sitting there and laughing, or not even laughing, just sitting there and dragging us all down with them, because they're the ones in charge. They're the ones who make the decisions. And so the fact that they got up, made some calls, maybe poured themselves a cup of coffee, and sold a couple of reams of paper, established a few new clients. I mean, it's all copacetic. It's all nice and hunky-dory, like I said. So the good vibes at the very least are back, and I'm very, very, very excited for training camp to get here in a few weeks' time. But between now and then, and even then, once it all hits, I will be here with you in the Bleacher Report app on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's live every single Tuesday and Thursday. We were off last week, had some travel stuff, so that's my bad. You can also catch these on demand in the Bleacher Report app. Just follow me right here in the BR app down below, right down there, and you can see exactly how to do that. If you're on YouTube, you can also obviously watch these specific shows on demand on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, but you can also watch all the video content that I put out about the Dallas Cowboys right here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. This week, we've had 4 videos with, 2 of them were obviously these BR shows, but 2 were different conversations, just kind of talking about the Cowboys, looking at the Cowboys, examining the Cowboys. Tony Catalina joined me on Tuesday. And like I said, Mookie Alexander joining me on Friday, and we'll have some more things coming next week. We're very, very close to the end of this road. And the beginning of everything being relevant, or the Cowboys in the NFL as a whole being relevant on a day-to-day basis. But between now and then, I promise I won't leave you, even though I did last week. Again, that travel was a little bit unexpected, but I'll be here every single week getting you there. And then once we're there, we'll kind of be holding hands and making it through all together. So the link to my personal YouTube channel is also in the description down below for those of you on the tube. Posting a lot of stuff there as well. Got some fun stuff cooking up for next week. Basically, I just live in this chair in my office. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I go. Shooting videos, writing articles. I'm pretty blessed. It could be a lot worse. But let's go ahead and let's get out of here. Very happy 4th of July. Like I said, be safe, eat some wonderful food. I've got some Slovacek sausage that I've already seasoned. It's kind of ready. If you know, you know. And I'm looking forward to having a good time. I hope you do as well. And I hope it's all safe, like I said, and keep your dogs, your animals as comforted as you can. It's a scary day for them. But thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. And we will see you next time.